אמר את האמת, אבל ידע להסבוק את זה בצורה מצחיקה.
ידע להסביר שהמלך הוא עירום, אבל בלי שהמלך ייפגע.
עברו 40 שנה, ואתה בא פה למקום. אתה פה כל הזמן. זה היה העולם שבו מתכנסים.
מרסלו, סגרתם שער?
לא.
מה
עשירי, אבל עשירי.
כן, עשירי. יוני יכול.
כן, יכול.
11 הגיוני? כן. 11 עשירי לשביעי בשעה 11.
אתה יכול להיות בזה במועד ב'?
מה?
במועד ב'?
אני אדאג להיות.
פשוט...
כן, בסדר.
זה לא,
כן.
עכשיו.
מישהו בטוח יהיה, לא אתה, מישהו יהיה.
Okay, so hi again everyone, and now we will have our keynote. And when Marcelo and I were thinking, what can we bring that will actually be interest to people coming from Michal's lab working on plant behavior, and people coming from Avigdor, and we thought we should go for something applied, and this was the direction. And luckily Noam agreed, and Dr. Noam Lieder, is a head of the ecological department in the Nature Protection Authority, and he has actually started his PhD here, studying bird bringing and Palestine sunbird, and the dialects that they have in different neighborhoods, but which is very basic fundamental ecology research. But then he converged and he is now dealing with all these applied problems, and this is what we'll hear for him as a dilemma in this talk. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for inviting me, Marcelo and all. It's my first keynote talk. I'm a little excited. I feel a little old looking at the crowd. And so I'd like to start with a catchy title, which is based on the wisdom of another old individual. Where is this? Good. So I don't know if you know Larry David, one of the most funny and I think smart people that are around. And so the title of my talk would be, do not curb your enthusiasm, but conserve your ecology. And this is what it did for me as a nature conservationist. So my name is Noam Lieder. I head the Ecology Science Division of the Israel Nature and Parks Authority. So a few words about my background. Although all mentioned, I studied biology here in Tel Aviv. I did my master's thesis on behavioral ecology, on this peculiar behavior of this bird called the black start. It brings enormous amounts of stones to its nest, and we try to look at what the function is. Arnon was one of my bochanim, so this is many years ago. I continued to do a PhD here, again with Yoram Yontov and John Wright from the University of Bangalore in Wales.
You look different.
Looking, yeah, a little taller, yes. And so bioacoustics, behavior, dialects, all kinds of interesting things. And I want to give you from the start 2 bits of advice. The first would be enjoy what you do, because what you're doing now is, I think, an experience you will never have in your next career moves. So enjoy and have fun. The second thing is wear sunscreen. So today I work at the Israel Nature Parks Authority. A few words about us. We are a governmental organization. We are responsible by law for conservation and protection of nature in Israel. We promote the declaration of protected sites, nature reserves for nature, national parks for heritage, things like that. We are also responsible for local and world heritage site management in Sada, Caesarea, Lebanon, things like that. And we operate under the Ministry of Environmental Protection. We have a very strong science division with about 40 ecologists. Most of them are PhDs. And our conservation paradigm basically works in two ways. So we prefer to manage protect habitats. So if you protect habitat a large enough area and it will be representative, it will be have connectivity, we'll probably save everything that's there even without knowing all the organisms that are living there. Unfortunately, here in Israel, it doesn't always work, so we find ourselves doing a lot of species management. So we have to save the vultures, and we have to take care of the sea turtles and hug the otters and things like that. 25% of the area, of the land area in Israel, is protected as nature reserves, and we represent different ecological systems. Not all of them are represented equally. So we would have, for example, a large amount of xeric deserts. We have a pointer here. Yeah, on top. Going back, okay. So we have a lot of representation of these xeric deserts, much less cow soils. So, for example, if you would give up the university, we could maybe restore all the cool cow that's here. And so this is maybe a good idea. Israel has a rich natural biodiversity, some numbers about terrestrial animals, terrestrial vertebrates. I'm sorry, in marine biologists, I didn't mention you, and Neta, I'm sorry that we didn't include vertebrates here. And we're actually guardians for the conservation of this astounding natural resource. Now, I know it's a corny sentence, but what's behind it is we're responsible. Okay, and with responsibility, we take this responsibility very, very seriously. And what I want to share with you is 3 moments during my career that I got an insight, actually I got a kick in the head with something that had profound influence on the evolution and maturation of myself as an ecologist and as a conservation biologist. I would like to mention from the start, none of what I'm going to tell you is my work alone. It's the collaborative work of tens and hundreds of people at the INVA, rangers, ecologists, planners, and who, without them, none of this could have materialized into something than my own weird thoughts. So let's start. Let's start at the end. So when I started work in 2007, after about a month, Dr. Margareta Volchak, who is the plant ecologist on my team, called me to the Negev to see this rare plant. That apparently there was a plan to have a railway run over it. So this is a plant, Ormuzaki negevensis, Leshon Shor negevit. My own personal translation, maybe Arab knows the English name, Negev foxtongue. It is an endemic species, meaning it only lives in Israel and it's critically endangered. So here are a few other photos of this nice plant. And so when we arrived in this place at the end of the road near the nuclear reactor in Dimona, and I think I didn't take any of these photos, but I think the scenery was kind of darkish and kind of grayish. And so we go into this, next to the road is this small sandstone hill, and on top of it is about 20 or 30 shrubs. It doesn't look like much. And so we looked at the shrubs, and the ranger pulled out the map, and he showed that the train is supposed to, the tracks are exactly on that piece of ground. So I asked Margareta, okay, so what about our other populations doing? And she tells me there aren't any. This is it. And now remember, this is endemic. So suddenly you find yourself a month after you just started working in the real world, looking towards your back, there's nobody there, it's just you, Margareta, and the ranger. And this is the end. You're looking at the last plants on Earth. And I can tell you, it doesn't get as real as that moment. And so after a bit of kind of catching my senses, I asked Margareta another question. So can we take seeds and maybe propagate? I said, well, we tried, and it doesn't work. They don't germinate. And this is where you kind of get this feeling. And this gave me a long, first of all, the drive back home was very, very thoughtful, very quiet. And I think this is what triggered for me the need to go into strategic planning for conservation, because it's too complicated. Okay, if you wait until the end, you'll see the end. But if you think about it before, maybe we need to take some more actions, and other organizations in the world have already experienced this. So maybe you have some knowledge about species that are about to become in danger of being extinct. So you want to, and this is what the red list is about. And so we want to assess their situation, know their threats, and then build some kind of vision. Okay, I want to see these plants all over the Negev. That's a nice saying. Now you have to go into the goals and objectives and to get the money and get the people and do it on time to make sure that your vision, you're going to pay for it a lot. Okay, and so once you have planned these actions, you start to implement them, and you find that things are some work, some don't, and you start working and you run the gauntlet again. And this is basically what you need to do if you want to have a good attempt at conserving species. Doesn't always work, but if it's going to work, this is the procedure. And what we did to test this is we built a program, a national program for conservation of threatened plants in Israel. This was led by Dr. Margaret and managed by Merav Leber, which you heard in the morning. That's why I missed your talk. And I can tell you that after 10 years of running this program, it's one of the most ambitious and successful nature conservation schemes in the least of my generation. So started out with these 2 volumes of the Israeli Red Book of Plants Threatened with Extinction, and this book revealed about 400 species out of 2,700 are threatened with extinction. So we commissioned work by the late Dr. Gad Pollack, who wrote the Red Book. So we commissioned a program for conservation of all these endangered plants, something with clear objectives, principles, and targets, and it's based on IUCN knowledge and based on all the things that have been done in Israel so far. And so this is the plan. We have, first of all, we want to get legal protection. Many of the species that I just talked about are not protected even. We want to do in situ conservation, so we need to look where these plants are, what are the dynamics to manage the habitat, to conserve the habitat, have it protected. We also talked about ex situ conservation, so we said, well, let's put seeds of all these endangered plants in the bank, the gene bank, and also have them grow in refuge gardens. And of course, the goal is to do reintroduction. All this needs a very specialized central planning coordination and extensive data management, and basically a lot of money, and a lot of people have to work with this. So we went to the Ministry of Jerusalem and Heritage, and we said, well, remember that Al Tiktof campaign? This is a direct continuation. This is it, okay? This is the real Al Tiktof of the 2010. And luckily, they generously funded us for the past 10 years with a lot of money. I'm talking millions of shekels of your taxpayers' money. And this program, which is run by Margareta and Merav, is very successful because they know how to cooperate with the major players. So all the major botanical gardens and universities and researchers and different ministries, and it works. If they can sit in a small room together without shouting at one another for half an hour, I think it's a success. And so every year the plan calls for extensive surveys of plants and distribution monitoring. All the data goes into a very elaborate database with GIS. You can actually question this database and use it as researchers. And if you want more details, you can probably talk to Merav. And seeds are collected in the gene bank. We've collected more than what's written here. So almost all the plants have already been collected. Seed bank, they are ready for deployment if needed on a rainy day. We have many botanical gardens that have these rare plants. So there's educational purposes, but also a very quick recovery. So if you need plants to do some kind of local restoration, you have it. And again, most of the red plants are already in the collections. We do a lot of reintroduction, propagation, reproduction monitoring. So far, this program has reintroduced 54 species back to nature. Some of them perhaps most of them, has been done by high school children in the FIO. I think that's an amazing achievement. And finally, in 2019, we convinced the Ministry of Environment then to add all these missing endangered species, and they are now protected as in the Israeli list of protected species. So what about our Homozacea? Well, luckily the plans for the train were stopped because we offered an alternative and much more smart solution. And after many tries, Dr. Sima Kagan from Volcanic Institute managed to create plants for us from clones. It's not the best, but now we have a population of this plant on the other side of the road in the Munshi National Park. It's protected area, and it works so far. Now, please don't tell me back to genetics, okay? We're not there, okay? This is the last specimens on Earth, all right? So this is the first example of what I'm about to tell you. Second one, it's a little more complicated, even the title. So on the 3rd of December 2014, around 9 o'clock in the evening, I get a phone call, not me, but tens of people in INPA, and apparently valves at the Katsa pipeline next to Beroa burst with it 5 million liters of crude oil. The next morning, this is what the place looked like. And when you look from the air, this is what I saw when I arrived by plane. And you look, it's 7 kilometers of oil. Wow, this is huge. This is something we never experienced before. And so when you're still on the plane, you say, well, this is really, what do we do? And just to convince you that 5 milliliters is a lot, if it was gasoline like 95, you could line up 100,000 cars and fill their gas tanks with this. And this flowed through nature reserve of the Vatagona. You can see the path. It was blocked from going through Nahal Hava and reaching Eilat. I'm showing you this map because there's another component we found out after we were oiling on the ground. Apparently, in 1975, there was also another oil spill, which was not reported. And you can actually go, and this is 40 years before 2014. And so we found this out, and we went to this area, and we kicked the topsoil. You smell it, 40-year-old petroleum. And this would be, we found this crucial for solving this puzzle of what happened to the ecosystem. So I was called upon to help build a monitor. Can you take off this word somehow? Yes. So I was called to build a monitoring plan for looking at the oil spill and restoration, because I had some prior experience with an oil spill in Nahal Tzim, 2 of them actually. Very good. And so you always keep in your pocket this kind of okay. If I need to monitor something, what do I do? Don't be prepared, okay? Things happen. So of course, in this situation, you want to monitor the pollutant, you want to look at contamination in the soil. You maybe want to look and see, in the case of soil, maybe there's some kind of active bacteria that can heat it up, things like that. But of course, you're looking at ecosystem monitoring. So you want to quantify the impact of the pollution on ecosystem function, okay? And you want to look at the effectiveness of the restoration. So first of all, in your checklist, you need something you can measure from 0.0 till the end. It'll probably be something biological, so animal and plants, but you can't measure them all. So you're looking for some kind of biological indicator which can testify to the functioning of the system. And usually, and that's kind of like a cheat sheet, look at the literature, probably an example. So in the case of a desert oil spill, there are no good examples. Okay, the only one we know is in Kuwait, and not such a good data. Okay, so now you think about, okay, we need to select indicator species. And so again, there's this checklist of what you want from indicator species. It has to be sensitive, it has to be a constant response, so not too much variability, all kinds of things. But I want to emphasize two two things. One is the concept of a keystone species. So these are species that have strong interactions with other species, and they affect the ecosystem strongly in relation to their abundance and distribution. Now, I have to tell you that sometimes there's difficulty in determining which is the keystone species, and sometimes you only find it after it's already disappeared, and you find that the system has collapsed. Second concept, not necessarily good for monitoring, but still very important, is a flagship species, meaning that if you want to convince the public to help, finance, do what's right, then you look for these sexy, charismatic creatures that can tell the story. Okay, and sometimes it will be big and it will be rare and it will be very cute, like this animal. This is the Dorcas gazelle, one of about 2,500 we have in Negev. And the herd in Evrona is the largest of them now. It's about 250 animals. And they live between the acacias. And this is the flagship species. It has nothing to do with the monitoring that I will tell you a bit about. But when I arrived, there was great worry what will happen with the gazelles because they feed on the acacia pods that you can see here on the ground. And there's a lot of acacia pods. But there's a lot of oil. So this is what's actually available for the gazelles. So it's kind of a goop soup with a lot of these acacia pods. And there was worry that actually the gazelles would be poisoned. And so when you arrive there, and suddenly everybody looks at you because you're the ecologist, okay, you're the doctor. In the real world, it's not like here. It's that's pretty scary. And so my first advice to Doron Nissim, who was the Elad district manager, was, well, Doron, I think that if we take out all this gunk and the soil will dry up. The next time we come to feed, I know that gazelles, when we feed, they ingest a little soil with the tongue. But we did calculations from all kinds of sources, and it won't reach any level that would actually influence in a negative way these gazelles. And so this was with 12 o'clock at night. At 5:30 in the morning, 100 people are raking all the acacia pods from around the trees. 3 days later, about 10 truckloads, about 100 tons of this is taken to some kind of, I think it's to to be treated. And then there was a bit of relax among the rangers who wanted to protect their nature reserve and a flagship species. And so when there's all this turmoil of people cleaning and politicians coming and suddenly press and the scientists are coming, let's help out. And we have this special kind of bacteria that's going to eat up all of them. And so you suddenly have time to go and explore what are the possible indicators. What is the keystone species? And so this is what we did, me and my fellow ecologists. And so let's talk a bit about what a keystone species is, and I think that the Hebrew word doesn't do it justice. So in Hebrew, it's a key species, but the term is keystone. Keystone is not a key. Keystone is a stone. Keystone is the stone that is in charge of keeping this arch bound. So if you take out the keystone, Eben Roshai in Hebrew, the arch will collapse. So now when you think about what you're looking for this organism that if something happens to it, the system collapses. All right? And when you look at it from the air, it's very important and very apparent that it's about 400 acacia trees, which we measured. We found out that most of them were actually exposed to a lot of oil like this. Most of them had all the roots surrounded by this crude oil. And so this is a keystone species. All right, if something happens to the acacias, the system collapses. Now, how do you build a monitoring system? So you have to get a little further away from this to envision what an acacia tree actually looks like, how it functions. So if you go to the eastern side of Evrona, the place which was not polluted, you suddenly find these very big old trees, acacia trees, maybe 200, some people say maybe 600 years. So you're walking and looking at this very impressive acacias. Wow, the stories that this tree can tell. Maybe a lapid-faced vulture once nested on it. This is something we haven't seen since the 1980s. And so you sit there and, the fumes of petroleum or whatever stink from oil. And there's a lot of pressure because you need to go back and get answers. And then suddenly I said, well, there's pressure from, I've seen this picture. Where have I seen it? And immediately I was thrown back 22 years from that date to a Sunday, 8:15, the building next to you. First year ecology with Amish. And you see it. This is the picture. This is the acacia. This is all the life around it. So there is a whole ecosystem of organisms that are interacting with the tree. And so we have the animals that are feeding on leaves. Some of them are feeding on the flowers, on the fruits. Some of them are feeding on what is feeding. So you can see it. And I don't know, maybe I was drunk from the fumes, but you actually see it. And from then on, it was very clear what we need to do because the scenario was very simple. We have oil contaminating the roots. There could be two mechanisms, either the trees uptaking some kind of toxic substances, or something just physical barrier, so that the oil could be maybe wrapped around the roots and preventing it from sucking up water. And so if the tree gets weak, we'll start to see in the leaves. Maybe have impaired photosynthesis. We'll maybe have all kinds of metabolites in the tree, in the leaves. You might have a lack of synchronicity in flowering and seed production. So, and we can measure all this. We can measure all these physiological things because we found out later on that there are all kinds of researchers like you that didn't know how to do it. And so we said, let's measure all these, but then let's measure all these interactions in some way and get supporting evidence. So if the tree is weakened and we suddenly see a shift in crucial members of these, we'll get additional information that some change is going through the tree. And so running back to and asking many of my colleagues to make sure I was right and didn't fuck it up in some way. And eventually, this was the basis of our monitoring system. So the monitoring plan was to look at all these other things, to look at acacias, to look at them also physiologically, and to use all this evidence from all these groups and see their changes to complement the acacia monitoring. Of course, such a monitoring, and there's another component of doing seed germination experiments I need to pick up the pace. Luckily, we commissioned the Maharag, probably know the Maharag, to carry out this very demanding monitoring. I think about 15 of Israel's top scientists in all these groups went out to the field. 7 years later, we have a good answer of what happened. Apparently not a lot, but they use all kinds of really cool tools. Somebody mentioned remote sensing. You can look at photosynthesis. These acacias using NDVI. You can actually look at how the trunk is expanding and shrinking on a daily basis as the tree sucks up water and all kinds of cool things. And so we learned a lot. But what we learned, I think, after a few weeks of a germination experiment, that none of the plants, of the acacia plants that were seeded in polluted soils, hardly any of them managed to germinate. Those that germinated did not survive. But what was most worryingly is that we found that they didn't even germinate in 40-year-old oil impacted soil. And so that we found out that it's not going to spontaneously recover based on all kinds of bacteria activity in the soil that will eat up the oil. And we needed to do something active. So about 20 international companies came with their secret bag of bacteria and ingredients and said, well, we pour it here. 3 weeks, it's gone. We tried it. And it didn't work, unfortunately, but the monitoring program was very successful because it showed that apparently, at least after 7 years, nothing major happened to the mature trees, and actually the system is going back towards the state that was in the beginning. But the problem is that there won't be.
It works.
Okay. Oh, okay. There's not going to be a new generation of cases. So we need to do something about it. And because the biological cleanup was unsuccessful, we are now in the process of thinking about we need to change the soil, the topsoil, if we want to get something substantial done. Fortunately, we have a little time because of generation length applications. The last story takes me to what I call seeing the light. So in 2007, a ranger calls me up and says, "Norm, there is some kind of plan of road next to a nature reserve, and they want to use lighting, and I need your help. Maybe this is a day-to-day. This is a daily thing about my work. Somebody calls you. We need some kind of expert opinion." So he starts reading about it, and what I found out still is something that 16 years later still occupies me in a large amount of my time. So apparently, around that time of 2007, 2005, more and more imagery from NASA showed us the extent of light that's being extended out into space. Okay, and then suddenly science was thinking, well, if there's so much light at night, perhaps it's doing something. And the only people who were worried before were astronomers. They said, well, we can't see the stars. Now suddenly, ecologists are worrying, well, if there's no light in natural landscapes, what does that do? And in 2006, this very important review book by Brett Stoncorn and Catherine Rich was published. I read this book. And what I learned was quite amazing, quite shocking. So during our 3.5 billion years of evolution, everything on Earth has actually evolved to synchronize to a giant clock. The clock has two hands, like our clocks. The big hand goes about 365 days around the sun. During it, we have seasonality because the Earth is tilting. The small hand is the one that causes it to revolve around itself once about every 24 hours. And the amount of day and nighttime within this 24 hours changes according to the seasons. And so all life on Earth evolved through its DNA to learn how to survive under these conditions of night and seasonality. This would be most basic creatures that photosynthesis. This is what triggers bird migration, the length of the day. So the days are becoming, as the day part, the 24 hours becomes shorter. This is the trigger. This is also the trigger for flowering for basically all our fruits and vegetables. It would manage to do other and every animal that comes to pollinate them. And natural light at night dictates where seed turtles will go. And the full moon will dictate when the synchronicity of corals will occur. Now, when you start using artificial light, suddenly the turtles don't know where to go, so they don't know which way is the sea, and they go the other way. Birds suddenly lose their migration routes. They migrate using stars because they can't see stars and get into tall buildings. Trees suddenly come out of synchronicity. So look at this fall leaves. So look at the right side under the lamp. So this lamp is getting mixed signals. This is pretty bad. And so it appears that we are trying to trick a 3.5 million year clock. It doesn't work that way without us staying in place. And I found this quite shocking, but what I found more shocking was in the last chapter of the book, suddenly Travis, which I've learned to know and talk to many times, he kind of comes out of the page and says, "No, this is for you." Okay? And he says, what if we wake up one morning, find out all our conservation planning over the past 30 years only told half the story. We only looked at the night. Why is that? Because we are diurnal animals. And so we wake up in the morning, go to work, but I think at night, go to sleep. We don't know what's going on in the world. Okay? And apparently, there is that the world is different at night and nature needs the night. This was pretty shocking. This is like getting cowboy boots with it, like a very getting into your temple. And I took it very personal. I don't know why, but this really shocked me. And what this means is if we want to save habitats, we want to save biodiversity in habitats, we can't just save them half the time. We need also to save their nocturnal habitat, which would look like this. In simpler words, if you want to save the animals on Earth, you need to learn how to save the animals in the stars. And I quickly looked at light pollution in Israel. This is what the Mediterranean region looks like. You can see the negative. It's still dark. But we compared the Mediterranean region to our strategic planning for conservation, which is the nature reserves and ecological corridors. We found that many of our nature reserves are polluted night by night. And the rate of change is incredible. So we are actually losing the night at the speed of light. And this is very alarming. And so we started very quickly, got organized. We gained more scientific knowledge by working with all kinds of international groups and learning more, and then started to raise awareness and looking at the technology. And suddenly you're not an ecologist, suddenly you're a light planner. And luckily, with a lot of friends today, we are leading the efforts to mitigate light pollution. We're working with a lot of open spaces infrastructure. And for example, we know how to build roads today which will light up the road, not light up the environment. We know how to make sure that critical overpasses, this is on the road to Jerusalem, while the road is lit up, this overpass will be completely dark, and these results will cross. We also started to look at nocturnal creatures and started to monitoring bats. And we made sure that we are members of the Eurobats agreement on conservation of bats. And we initiated writing guidelines on how to save bats. We later took these guidelines home and said, well, this is in his wild ideas. This is all the top bat scientists in Europe are saying, so let's do the right thing. This is a powerful tool. And then we started working with the IUCN, and Eve and I, and the Turkish colleagues to see that the future of the green turtle in the Eastern Mediterranean is not so safe because all this tremendous light pollution, we use remote sensing and got some good data and made this thing an issue that was actually considered in the red list assessment of the species. We also looked at cave lighting. I won't talk about this, but this is crazy because the cave is dark. When you bring people in, you bring with them little bits of cyanobacteria and life. And when you suddenly have humidity and CO2 and light, you suddenly get life on these side effects. This is called lambent flora. So it's kind of like beards, green beards. This is not what's supposed to be in the cave. So we found out how to control this by using novel energy systems. And then the greatest achievement is that within the INPA, we took off all these traditional lighting schemes that we had in all kinds of places. So let's do something more sensible. And so we started to look at architectural lighting. And so this would be controlled, it will be limited in time, it will be, of course, nobody will break a leg on the way, but you can actually use lighting and not as we used to do it before. And everything today now finally is in very practical guidelines. You can download it on the internet, you can use it at home, in your city, wherever, here in the university. And actually it's very simple. But I have 5 minutes, okay. But I think the most impressive thing that I did in this process is one night, Gal Bismuth was a ranger in the Sherman region. He sends me this picture. And I said, wow. And I called him up immediately, it's 11 o'clock at night. And Gal, where I am at work. Wow, I would love to work in such a place like this. Now, what is he saying? He's seeing the Milky Way. Only 25% of the people on Earth can still see the Milky Way because of light pollution. And I don't know how many of you, by the way, live in a place where you can see the Milky Way? Good for you. How many actually thought about what is the Milky Way? So this is the Milky Way. It's our own galaxy. It's this giant disk. We are just, all our solar system is some kind of esoteric point of this this outer Orion arm, and inside, science tells us this is a giant black hole called Sagittarius A. Science actually finishes to understand what's going on about here. So if you get a chance to look at the Milky Way, you're looking in through this disk, okay, into the heart of something. This could be this black hole, this could be God, this could be your life, your career, doesn't really matter. I can tell you it's one of the most humblest, I don't know if that's humbling moments that an arrogant son of a bitch like me can have. Okay? And wow, what a view. So how did we lose it? How come humanity was stupid enough to lose something? But then I remember, well, I'm an ecologist. I don't have good taste in anything, so it doesn't really matter. And so we talked about the Ramon crater or Mahesh Ramon. So this is where it is, right here, in the middle of the heart of darkness. What I call it's a nature reserve. It's actually two nature reserves connected. It has a tremendous biodiversity with different bioregions that converge together. And this is why, for me, it's important to conserve. The city of Mitzpe is on the crater rim. It's leaking light pollution. All the military bases north are also leaking light pollution. It is exceptional night views. We measured it. It's world class. And so what we said, we want to designate the Ramon crater as an international dark sky park. It's kind of like an UNESCO prize, which is awarded by the International Dark Sky Association for places where the night sky is managing its natural state, preserving this unique appearance, either due to ecological reasons or astronomical reasons or some kind of cultural heritage. This is our logo. After you have a logo, you never go back. 3 years later, of very intensive work of all the staff in the Ramon crater, in 14th September 2017, we were designated the 54th place on Earth that got this recognition, the first in the Middle East. And this created a lot of buzz, of course, and about 100,000 people come each year to spend the night in Mahesh Ramon, usually around the Persian shower. And in the Beirut campground, there could be 1,000 people, and they want some lighting to see that they don't burn their steak, they don't break their leg, something like that, and you can do it. But if you do it in a practical way, you can see there's no light above the horizon, so you won't break your leg on the way to the bathroom. If you would lower the lights, the light we can even see you have like solar paths. They can use alternatives. But when you look up, this is what you see. Okay, this is the view. You can't see it at home, only you can. All right? This is something you should just, wow, what can I have this at home? And this is what we wanted for people to start thinking. Okay? Immediately we're approached by the Lonely Planet, which said, well, we're astrotourism, you're in Dark Sky Park, we want you to give us some details. And of course, this has touristic value and economic value. And the town of Mitzpe Ramon, after 10 years, we were trying to convince them to change their lives. Half a year after we designated the crater, to change all the lights. And I remember when I saw it, I took a nightly tour of the town, and I found my wife. I said, "Slade, it is. From now on, putting my legs on the table, lighting a cigar, putting a small booklet on the door, so the smoke won't come out." I was really excited because we managed to do what we set out to do: is preserve the ecological system in the crater from light pollution. And so, what I learned from this experience, apart from the trivial things that ecological light pollution is a growing challenge for nature conservation, and that you need to get awareness, because what you don't know, you don't care. Okay, so once you start spreading the word, people start thinking about it. But what amazed me most is that focusing on preserving this rare human experience actually led to a lot of tools in light planning that were acceptable by public. And this had clear benefits to conservation of the natural ecosystems. And so I know that, as Bob said, it's not dark yet, but it's getting there. And with this, I want to conclude my talk and tell you, please do not curb your enthusiasm. And please conserve your ecology, because you will need it in the coming years where this world is going to. You will need it in any way, either if you come to work for us or you do something else, you need it. So the last thing I want to tell you, trust me on the sunscreen. Thank you very much.
We have time for a few questions, please. Have the chance now.
I have a question. So what would be beyond enjoy what you do now? So I want to take you to the beginning of your talk, to this moment that I could really feel and sympathize with. What would be your advice to these guys of how can they do the transition easier? What can they do now before they finish towards their graduation to be more efficient as an ecologist afterwards?
It's like basic training, nothing prepares you. So be prepared for not being prepared, but be prepared to think out of the box and don't be afraid to ask stupid ideas. I still ask stupid ideas every day. Some of them actually are not that stupid, but don't worry about this. Take what you studied, what you learned, and what in your specialized world, and think, how does this apply to other worlds? And I heard today many exciting talks of different worlds, aquatic worlds and culture and all kinds. Everything could be relevant in this very crazy and dynamic world, and so expect to be expected the unexpected, and just chill for a second. I won't tell you to start smoking because this is the way the parents are long. Breathe deep, the gathering gloom. But I'll tell you, don't be afraid to ask questions and to be curious.
I have a question. I have a question. General, if you can now from another perspective, you look on the trends where this country is going on from the point of view of the population growth, challenges of climate change, land use change. As you within the NPA, how do you see these challenges in the way you manage now the land, and how the nature conservation, how the natural reserves may be playing a role that they are playing now, or how they may play in the future?
Tough question. Well, first of all, the achievement that 25% of the land in Israel is already set aside, hopefully it won't be just waiting for somebody to develop, which is also an idea that has been going around and we're joking about it. But I think that at least what I learned is that you need to be truthful to your scientific truth. Okay, because it will be all the time will be evaluated by different outside groups, politicians and people who have interest, and oil people and wind turbine people. But as long as you try to say, well, science has some kind of built-in truth, we need to do the right thing. So let's look at the evidence, look at the data, sit together, put it on a map, and let's try to do the right thing, is the only way to lead Israel in this very impossible trajectory that we're going through. And hopefully, at least a bit will come out right. I can't promise anything else.
Thank you very much. Thank you really, Noam, for enlightening presentation. I think all the students here have the chance, I think not a common chance, to see someone who has been in their seat, came to true real working and challenging the issues of our nature conservation in our complicated and unique country. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We are now continuing to our third session. Yeah, we're continuing to our third session. I think this has been a great presentation. I'm really happy that Noam and Brita being here with us. So we're now going back to, well, blowing the wind. That's a very nice title. And after the blowing that we have with the leader, Noam, please, yeah, and we will indicate you the time with 12 minutes, and then okay.
So, hello everybody, my name is Amir Sarik, I'm from Gallery Lab, and the title of my talk is Blowing in the Wind, Flight Performance of Miniature Insects in Windy Conditions. So, our lab is a lab that research mainly biomechanics. So, I'll start with linking biomechanics with ecology. So, okay. So we're at the time of global change, of biodiversity crisis, and here are some numbers of classes of animals that are near extinction. And my research is regarding insects. So you can see insects are leading the way in extinction. If you want to stop the biodiversity loss, we might as well start taking care of insects. And not only this is a very high number, it's also they only evaluated about 1% of the known species of insects. So the risk situation is much worse. And not only this, but we also have the climate change, the climate crisis. And this is only a part of a bigger figure of the UN's International Panel of Climate Change, which what they wanted to tell you that because of climate change, species will range shift. They will need to move in order to survive the climate change. And this is where biomechanics is getting into the picture. We need to understand how animal moves, because in order to survive the climate change, they will need to shift their habitat. So just for example, true story that happened to me previous weekend, I was driving to the family on the north. I can see on the right of the road green, on the left of the road green. And then I suddenly see on my windshield this insect that is trying to move from one habitat to another, but failed to do so because of fragmentation. So we need to understand how they move in order to help them do it. So in this figure, please don't look on the illustration, just look on the trend line. The x-axis is the body mass, and the y-axis is the number of insect species. So we can learn from this figure that most of the insects are tiny insects. So if we want to be effective in saving the insects, we might as well act for the tiniest insects, which is the topic of my talk. And are they blowing in the wind, as I asked in the title? So we all know that fan can blow away a fly, and the fly is relatively a large insect. So what about the tiniest insects? Will they also be blown in the wind? So once again, scientific research has proven the obvious. And here you can see body mass and velocity of the animals, and you can see that as the animals are more little, they move slower, and the red diamonds are insects. So the fly would be somewhere about here, the housefly, and the tiniest insect will be regarding the body size mass will be somewhere over there, but we still don't know their velocity. And this is what I'm trying to figure out, what is their velocity. And people need it. People already use it actually with their research. So some scientists try to simulate dispersal of miniature insects, and this is the results of their simulation from the beginning. This is the dispersal, and in their methods, what they wrote we will maintain the following assumption: the mean direction of the flight will be in the same direction as average wind velocity during the flight and a distance proportional to the wind speed. Meaning the insects are just blown in the way, they don't have their own velocity. And is it actually true? So this is what I'm trying to figure out. So the goals of my research is to characterize the flight performance capabilities of miniature insects, to estimate miniature insects limitation at windy condition, and evaluate how miniature insects manage to fly at windy conditions. So in order to do so, I chose a representative variety of insects, one from each different order, different habitats, different ecological functions, same body length, all of them about 1 millimeter body length, and also different wings. So which is more interesting biomechanically, and I won't get into it in this talk. And we will call them wasp, whitefly, thrips, and beetle, okay, which represent the variety of miniature insects. Okay, so let's take a look at our lab. We use a wind tunnel, a horizontal wind tunnel. Two cameras are recording at a high frame rate the insects flying inside the wind tunnel. I start by letting them fly without wind, and then I increase the wind until eventually they won't fly in wind that is too strong. And I need the insect to fly exactly the cross section of both of the cameras in order to get the data out. Later, I repeat the experiment only with vertical tunnel, and this is how it looks like. Okay, very tiny insects. So you can see the white dots. This is what the research is about. I hope you managed to see it. Okay, no. Okay. This is how it looks like. Again, I hope you can see. I take the images from both of the cameras, frame by frame, and reconstruct their trajectory. Why do I use two cameras? Because each camera gives me only 2D recording. And if the insect is flying towards the camera or away from the camera, I don't see any movement at all. And if I'm using two calibrated cameras, I can reconstruct the actual horizontal speed of the insect and get the actual data. And okay, so we're at the results. So those are the flight capabilities of those insects. On the horizontal, you can see the horizontal speed. Vertical axis is the vertical speed. And as you can see, all of them have the same range of flight speed, about 0.3 meters per second average speed. Maximum horizontal speed is up to 0.5 meters per second, and the vertical speed is much lower, is about 0.2, 0.3 meters per second. What does it actually mean? Half a meter per second is it fast and slow, so I converted it to kilometer per hour, which is just less than 2 kilometers per hour. And what does it mean regarding to the wind? So I took the wind data from the zoological garden, from the Yovel's wind station, and you can see the wind in the last Saturday. Okay, so you can see that during the day, most of the time, the wind is stronger than their flight capabilities, but during the night and part of the day, they can fly faster from the wind. And this was just another hot day. It was a day without any wind, almost at all. But what we need to understand regarding wind is that as we get closer to the ground, the wind will go slower, and the station is up on the roof. And if there is obstacle on the way, the wind will also get slower. And remember it for the last slide. So this is the flight capabilities. Can they climb? Can they fly upward? So it appears that they cannot fly upwards. They can fly up to 60 degrees. They cannot fly like this. We can see a little variety over here. We can see that when they are exposed to vertical speed, they start flying horizontally. They only trying to fly above against the wind, but they cannot fly actually 90 degrees. And what about wind direction in horizontal wind tunnel? So what we see here is the wind speed. Okay. Oops, no. Okay, we can see the wind speed, and you can see that each insect starts flying at different wind velocity. And here you can see the direction relative to the wind, and each dot is the average of all the data in the same experience and the standard deviation. So you can see that they prefer to fly against the wind. Most of them, while they can, they also can be found flying with the side wind, but they never fly with the wind, which is quite interesting. And if I would take only the experiments of the ones that flew against the wind, and I will draw it again. So now each dot is a different insect, and you can see that they prefer flying when they can fly faster than the wind, but they won't give up even if the wind is stronger. So all those below the trend line, they're actually drifting backwards. They're flying forward, but they're actually moving backwards because the wind is faster than the air. Okay, so for conclusions, my findings is that miniature insects can reach horizontal flight speed of 0.5 meters per second. The climb is limited. They prefer flying against wind direction. And if I'll return to the first question, are they blowing in the wind? So as Bob didn't say, the answer is blowing in the wind. And what does it mean? It depends on the wind and conservation wise. Okay, so if I link my results to the beginning of the talk, so this is a miniature insect in its habitat. Okay, there is wind. As I said, the wind is getting slower next to the ground, and if there is obstacles like herbs, it will get the wind will be slower. Actually, we measured the wind in a windy day in a cotton field, and we found that beneath the canopy, the wind is very slow, that the miniature insects can fly against the wind. So if we are destroying the habitat, okay, and the miniature insects need to leave their habitat, but the surrounding is fragmented, so the wind will just blow them away. But if we will manage the nature, and we will think about the huge diversity of miniature insects, and we will make a safe passage, the wind will get slower, and the insects will have a safe passage to a different habitat. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Much we have time for one question.
Why you were kind of surprised that they don't fly with the wind? You
Yeah.
turned it as interesting. I think it makes sense, no?
No, because they are very slow. They fly very slow, and you can find them everywhere. So I was thinking maybe they catch a lift with the wind, and they want to move with the wind. And actually, there are some data of insects up in the atmosphere that are flying with the wind direction, but this is probably a dispersal mode, which is different than active moving.
Over there, up in the sky, they have no other choice.
Yeah, yes. So it's probably two different modes. Actually, probably the main advantage of flying against the wind is that you get the olfactory cues, because their sight is very poor.
Any gliding insects? Do you know?
Yeah, gliding. I'm not sure, because they flap the wings constantly.
Only when they have fun.
Sure.
Good question. I guess a critical decision for them is when to depart. Like they can wait on the branch, and then only in the suitable wind conditions that are favorable for their signal, for their direction. So maybe the fact that they didn't fly with the wind in this particular experiment because they had the stimuli coming from there, or whatever the reason, it doesn't mean that they don't do it in nature when the wind serves them. Because Like we see it in in ballooning spiders, for instance, they wait for the right wind condition and then they depart. You know, it could be a selection there.
It could be, although I found that they won't start flying at high speed, and some other researchers find the same stuff. I don't know. It could be. My personal thinking is that they won't take off in high speed, they will. But if they do find themselves at high speed, then they change the mode, the flight mode.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now we're moving from insects to plants and plant communication, plant relationships. So Uti Gottlieb from the Health Newton Club.
Hi, my name is Uti Gottlieb. I'm a PhD student at Michal Master. The topic is, can plants integrate information on above ground competition in their directional responses below ground? In natural habitat, each individual plant is competing for a limited resources of light above ground and nutrient, water, and space below ground. The plants manage to perceive cues about these limited resources, and the cues are inform the plants about the competition strengths and relative position. Reduced light intensity is the cue for the resource light itself, and the changes in the light spectrum and also volatiles and leaf contacts are the cue for the neighbor's presence. And nutrient gradient is the cue for the limited resource itself, and nutrient depletion, volatile, and root exudates are the cues for the presence of neighbors. These competitive cues are known to induce plants' responses. The plant is managed to perceive all these many cues to integrate them into the most suitable competitive phenotype. Many studies have followed the dogma that cues above ground affect the shoot response, and cues from below ground affect the root response. But here we ask whether cues from above ground can induce responses in the roots, and can cues below ground may affect responses in the shoot. For example, the ratio of red for red cue is a focus cue to light competition before a shade is being cast. It is also known for this red for red cue that it's inform the plants about the neighbor's stature and its relative position. So these facts raise the question whether this cue may be perceived by the shoot and inform the plants for the neighbor direction below ground as well. Hence, can red for red cue may be the focus cue below ground as well. To study this question, we chose the plant Portulaca olorata, ridgeland, for this experiment. In previous studies, it shown to be responsive to the red for red cue. Growing away, avoiding competition, it's an option in procumbent plants, as you see in these three individual plants. And also growth direction is a crucial response for annual plants for having their optimal living condition to reproduce. This is the avoiding competition. To simulate a future competition queue, we use green filters. Green filters transfer the same spectrum as the plant leaves. It reduces the blue wavelengths, also the red, and relatively increase the far red to have a low ratio, about 0.3. The Q is perceived by the plant and responds in directional growth. And it perceives the Q by a phytochrom receptor in the shoot. Another thing, by using simulated neighbors, we could avoid the separate below and above competition lines. So in this illustration, we see that the green filters were located on one side of the planter. And we used low nutrient soil to fill all planters and use certain amount of rich nutrient soil to create three soil treatments. One, we distribute uniformly the nutrients in the planter, and then we condense the soil into a patch located near the filter and condensed patch located far from the filter. And the same treatments were also used as a control without the green filters. These 6 treatments were multiplied by 21 blocks. Portulaca seedlings were placed in the middle of the planter. This experiment took place in a common garden in the botanical garden in Turkey. The prediction was that the plant will perceive the cue and will respond in growth direction in the shoot. Also will be integrated to have a directional response in the roots. Hence, we predicted that the roots will grow away from a future competition queue. So we took pictures from each planter and we calculate by image J the relative angle of the shoot from a zero line, which is level for the most upright position of the shoot. And for the results in this graph, the x-axis show the relative vertical shoot angle. The positive numbers indicates the growing shoot away from the filter. And Portulaca responded in the 3 soil treatments by growing away from the filter, and it didn't affect by the soil nutrient distribution. This result confirm us that the plant did perceive the future competition. So, and what about below ground? For measuring or evaluating the root directional growth below ground, we divided the planter in quarters by cutting the soil. We will then, for each quarter, wash the soil and repeat the roots, clean it, and very carefully we were collecting all the roots from the fields. And then we spread the roots again in trays filled with water. We took pictures in a photograph then. And then we analyzed these photos in WinRiser software for having the root lengths in each quarter. And then each length measurement was transferred to the relative lengths in each quarter and placed in this index, root distribution index, to calculate the root distribution. And having the value 0 from this index, the meaning was that the roots were equally were growing in each one of the quarters, evenly distributed in the plant. Negative values indicate that more of the roots were growing in quarter A and B in the filter, and positive values were meaning that the roots more grew in C, D away from the filter. And so here in the x-axis, we saw the root length distribution, and the positive values indicates roots growing away from the filter. Portulaca responds to the nutrient distribution, and she moved the roots toward the patches. But also, as indicated in the yellow arrow, it was growing toward the filters more than the control. In this treatment, patch near the filter, we see that in both control and filter treatments, roots were growing to the patch, but they were growing more in the filter treatments. And in the lower salt treatments, patch away from the filter, both control and filter treatments, roots grew towards the patch, in the direction of the patch, but less in the filter treatments, which means more roots were growing to the filter side. And in the uniform distributed nutrients, again, both controls were growing evenly in the planters, but in the filter treatment, there were more growing roots toward the filter. So, although Portulaca allocated mainly the roots mainly towards the direction of nutrients, it was also allocated some of the roots toward the filter and toward the future contribution. So the results were in the opposite to our prediction. Instead of growing the roots away from the filter, Portulaca grew roots towards the filter. We suggest this behavior to be as a preemptive response, meaning that monopolize space and reducing the nutrients in this space will give advantage for the Portulaca in the future. And so we suggested that Portulaca was managed to perceive above ground cue and to integrate it with information about nutrient distribution below ground. This is the first study to show the effect of above ground cue on the root responses. And we hope that this experiment will be a hatch for more experiments to reveal more information about the above and below plants spheres. And I would like to thank the project students, Nadav and Shani, and to lab members of Michal lab. And thank you for listening.
Everything for this enlightening presentation. We're looking at the relationship between above and below ground, things that we generally, as humans, avoid to look what's going below ground, and we look above ground. So yes, we have a question.
Is it possible that the roots grow in the opposite direction from when they grow above ground, so they be more stable?
Yes, it might be this. Now we are trying to do more experiments to make sure that it's the response is for the cue above ground and not just balancing the plants growth. Yes, it's a good point.
Yoni.
Probably because you took like one species, right? Because I know like for plant variation, some plants actually grow towards the competitors, or like lianas and do that. So maybe also between different species, you're gonna get different responses in the root response. Maybe for that species, because towards the competitors or other species, we're gonna have.
Yes, for this experiment, we just chose the cue that was previously shown, and that we need to make sure that the response we get above ground indicates that we didn't see the cue yeah, other species might not respond to this one. But we are now also looking for another species named Hymenophalcus, and we're trying the response, not the growth direction response, but we're trying to check the response with no genes. Performance in the roots.
Any other question? Thank you very much, Ruti. Now we are stopping, making some technical accommodations, that we are moving to another organism that we have not have it yet in our conference about the bats. And I think this will be also very interesting. Presentation.
Trying to see.
Small bio.
Sorry, this will make it.
Okay, we have our last presentation of free. Last but not least. Last but not least, because we have another information after that, so
Stick around.
stick around, please.
Hi, my name is Ofueta. I'm a PhD candidate in Yossi Ovel's lab at Tel Aviv University. I hope that you can join me here in Tel Aviv on a small journey where I tell you about my study. Our journey begins in a public garden in Tel Aviv. I'm standing next to a bombax tree, and as you can see, dozens of bats are flying around the tree and feeding from its nectar. Bats are the second largest mammals order, with more than 1,400 species around the world. They are highly diverse and nocturnal. Not all of them. What? Some are also active during daytime. I'm sorry. Who are you? For free, I study bats. Good. So you're saying some bat species are also diurnal? Yeah, come with me. I'll show you. Wow, this is nice. Well, Sao Miguel, it's in the Azores. Oh, nice, nice. Oh, wait, hey, look, I see a bat box. Oh, super cool. Are these bats active? What time is it? Super early. And what species is this? Nyctalus azorel. Yes, as you can see, they're active during daytime. Okay, nice. But are there any more diurnal species? Very few, and most of them on islands. But why on islands? Well, it hypothesized that the lack of natural predators, such as birds of prey, allows the bat expanding their niche and being active also during the day. Oh, interesting. Hey, but wait, I studied the Egyptian fruit bat in Tel Aviv, so. Yeah, I know, but some of them are also active during the day. What? Really? The Egyptian fruit bat is the largest bat in Israel. It's widely spread. It's used in caves, abandoned buildings, and parking lots. Yes, I know that. Well, in the last 20 years, there are growing reports of bats that are active during the day in Tel Aviv. Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Nice, but what, only in Tel Aviv? Well, initially, this is what we thought, but then more and more reports from other cities in Israel came. Oh, but what, only cities? It's a good question. We believe that in the countryside, bats are more exposed to predation by birds of prey, but in the city, The bats can fly underneath the trees canopy and between the buildings and being more protected. In addition, the fruit trees are very close to the colony. Okay, so does anyone study these data? Yes, me together with my colleague, Maya Vander, but we started studying them thanks to a photographer.
Hey, I'm Dr. Maya Weinberg. How can I help you?
Hi, my name is Paul Bouquet. For the last 3 years, I have photographed bats during the day. I have thousands of photos if you want to study them.
Wow, look at these bats. They're smiling. Interesting.
Do you know why they do that? She smiles to the camera. No, this means that they're doing echolocation. Some bat species produce sound and use the retaining echoes in order to get a mental image of the surroundings. Yes, Egyptian fruit bats, even though they have excellent vision, also use echolocation by producing clicks with their tongue. Exactly, and when they do that, they look like smiling. Hey, but hold on. You don't mean they use echolocation during daytime, right? They have excellent vision. They don't need echolocation with such bright light. It's more than 10,000 lux. This is surprising. Are you sure about it? Yes, this is where we started studying it. We previously showed that the Egyptian fruit bat uses echolocation even next to streetlights. Yes, but the light levels are not even close. True, this is why we recorded and filmed the bats in their daytime activities in Tel Aviv. Come on, let's go. I'll take you to their colony. Are we going shopping? No, this is Dizengoff Center. It's a shopping center in central Tel Aviv. The colony lives in its underground supplier's parking lot. This is the entrance to the parking lot. I was standing here with an ultrasonic microphone and a video camera and recorded the bats while they were emerging. Okay, and did I recorded a total of 500 emerging bats, and 72% of them were echolocating while they were outside. This is a video of a bat emerging from the colony and echolocating. Nice. Look at this photo. You can see a mom carrying her pup in her echolocation clips. Does it always come in pairs? Yes, they always produce pairs of clicks. Okay, but so what? Maybe they're just used to do echolocation? True. We still need to show that it's functional. Come on, I'll take you to our next location. Okay, now what? Are we going to see a play? No, next to the theater there's a public garden where the bats like to forage. Oh, cool, wow, this is such a beautiful place. Look at the wisteria, it's huge. And the ficus trees, wow. And when we got here, we found bats that were resting on the wisteria plant. And every once in a while taking off and foraging from the ficus tree. But did the bat also echolocate you? Yes, all of the bat echolocated while taking off, while flying, while landing, and even with a food in their mouth, as you can see in the video. Oh, wow, how did you do that? I have absolutely no idea. Okay, so the bats were resting, foraging, echolocated, but it's still not necessarily functional. True. In order to examine the functionality, we checked if the bat changed the click rate just before landing. And they did. They significantly increased their click rate from about 12 clicks per second when flying next to the trees to about 20 clicks per second when landing. Oh wow, this really shows functionality. They changed the rate according to the task and the condition. True, but we wanted more proofs. Come on, do you like swimming? Oh, where are we? I thought you were taking me to the beach. No, this is an artificial pool where the bats like to come and drink. Here where? I mean, I see the pool is partly divided by a large wall. Did you manage to do it? Yes, and this is actually important, but I'll explain about it later. Okay, so when the bats come to drink, they like open their mouth and drink directly from the pool? No, they actually dip their chest in the water and then later lick their fur. Oh, no, that's crazy. So again, you were recording and taking videos of the bats while drinking. True, and we only chose successful attempts where the bats managed to touch the water. We divided the flags to two, approaching to the water and ascending from the water surface after touching the water. Oh, so you knew exactly what the bat was doing in each part, I mean, the collocation part. Exactly. And what were the results? Well, all of the bats collocated while approaching the water surface, reaching to a click rate of 31 clicks per second. And as far as we know, this is the highest collocation rate ever reported for Egyptian fruit bats. However, when the bats ascended from the water surface, they decreased their click rate to 0.6 clicks per second when flying in the open air. Oh, 0. They almost stopped collocating when flying in the open air. Exactly. Okay, but what about the ball? Okay, this is the interesting part. The bat stopped collocating while touching the water, but started again when facing the wall. Okay, this is functional. They control the rate, they change it according to the task, and they can even stop using it only to start again when needed. But is it different than in the night? Another great question. I also recorded the bat during the night, and there was no significant difference. Oh, cool. So Egyptian fruit bats use echolocation during the daytime, even though they have excellent vision. But why? Why do they need it? I mean, why is it so important to echolocate even when you have a fruit in your mouth? Well, we believe echolocation provides the bat better distance estimation, and that echolocation is more accurate than vision. But the integration of the two sensory modalities, in this case vision and auditory, is beneficial for the bats. Yeah, just like we integrate vision and hearing before we cross the road. Exactly. Oh, wow, that was nice and very interesting. Thanks for showing me around and sharing your research with me. Bye-bye.
Very nice, very nice. Very nice. So you have all of the skills of being a movie director and a scientist. So very nice. Question, we have time for questions. So the collocation is similar in the day for other species, or this particularly for the Egyptian?
No, so you have other bat species that also, when they're active during daytime, also use a collocation, but it's like a different collocation method. So this is what pretty unique for these guys, and we were actually very surprised that they're doing a collocation during daytime. It was kind of shocking.
In the same colony, you have some individuals that are always nocturnal and some that are always.
Yes, yes. So we do have bats that are active also during the day and also during the night. We put place GPS tags on them and we saw it. But we also check vitamin D, and there we see clear evidence of bats that are active during the day and bats that are active during the night. But can't mistake by which bat is nocturnal or diurnal.
In northern latitudes, let's say summer in Sweden, where you have very few nighttime hours.
Yeah.
You have diurnal activity of bats. You find anything similar from data that's from there to the situation with the fruit bats here?
So I must say that the fruit bats is really unique from what we have here. First of all, we mostly see it in cities. We actually do a survey now with we do a citizen service survey, and we hardly have any evidence of they're active in rural environments. And whereas up north in northern territories, or like on the Azores, for example, they're active everywhere. So what we see is like we suspect that urbanization is play a very big role here. And so it's very different. And according to like the results of the survey, we have it everywhere in Israel almost, which is kind of very surprising. Beginning with just Tel Aviv.
How many times did you have to rehearse it to get it?
How long is your PhD? I just want to say one thing, unrelated to my talk. Because Amir mentioned that we have a weather station in the zoology garden, like everyone is welcome to use it. It's online, and if you don't see it, you can write me and we can give you the data. I know a few researchers are using it, and so just feel welcome.
Thank you very much for the break. And after the short break, we will be able to announce the winners for the competition of the first best talk. Everyone was, I must say, I'm very happy that we organized this conference because all the presentations were really very nice, really very difficult for us. And thank you for the reviewers that are here as well to make the evaluation, the final evaluation. But if we come back here in 20 minutes, we may be able to announce the awardees. So thank you for all. Thank you for Noah for his outstanding presentation, and all you coming. But so we have coffee and tea and food outside as we have lunch, so you can reinforce a little and then come back. Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. That's important.